My stepmother ordered, "You have 48 hours to get out. Your sister owns this house now." So, I'm Ashley, 28 years old, a data analyst living in Portland, Oregon. The Victorian house on Maple Street had been my sanctuary for as long as I could remember. Every creaking floorboard, every paint chip on the windowsills held pieces of my soul. I'd invested everything, my time, my money, my heart, believing this place would forever be my refuge. Then, during Sunday dinner, my stepmother Linda slammed her wine glass down on the oak table. The sound shattered the peaceful evening like a gavel delivering judgment. "You have 48 hours to pack your things and get out," she declared, her voice ice-cold. "This house belongs to Stephanie now." My father Robert just sat there, cutting his pot roast, avoiding my shocked stare. My half-sister Stephanie, who'd been living her glamorous life in Miami for the past 5 years, barely visiting except for Christmas, was suddenly inheriting everything I'd fought to preserve. I stared around the dining room, the room where I'd installed new crown molding last spring, where I'd refinished the hardwood floors on my hands and knees. Every improvement, every sacrifice I'd made to keep this house standing felt like it was being erased with Linda's cruel words. The woman who'd given nothing was being handed everything, while I, the one who'd carried this family through their darkest times, was being tossed aside like yesterday's newspaper. I couldn't speak. My chest tightened, the air becoming thick and suffocating. Their betrayal cut deeper than any knife, but arguing felt pointless. I stood quietly, walked to my bedroom, grabbed my iPhone with trembling hands, and started planning something they'd never see coming. They thought I'd just pack up and disappear quietly. They were dead wrong. In 48 hours, when Stephanie walked through that front door expecting her free mansion, she'd wish she'd never set foot in Portland. Before we continue, I want to know, what time is it right now and which state are you reading from? Drop a comment so I can see just how far Ashley's story has traveled. The next morning, I woke in my childhood bedroom in our Portland home, Linda's ultimatum still echoing in my mind. I'd spent the last 6 years transforming this place, believing it represented our family's unbreakable bond. Living here with Dad and Linda after college, I'd shouldered their burdens without hesitation, pouring my heart and my Intel paycheck into every corner of this house. After their financial disaster 4 years ago, I'd stepped up like a true daughter should. My data analyst's salary was solid, so I covered the mortgage payments, $95,000 over 3 years when they couldn't make ends meet. I didn't think twice about it. This was our family home, where I'd grown up, where every memory felt sacred. I still remember that terrible day when Wells Fargo called, threatening foreclosure. Dad sat at the kitchen island, head buried in his hands, bills scattered everywhere. Linda paced frantically, her voice tight with panic. "We're going to lose everything," she kept repeating. I couldn't let that happen. I emptied my savings account, worked double shifts, and paid off their debt. The relief on their faces made every sacrifice worthwhile, or so I believed. I'd painted the living room a sophisticated sage green, replaced the warped bathroom tiles, and fixed the squeaky staircase that led to the second floor. Every nail I hammered felt like a promise to keep our family together. Meanwhile, Stephanie remained a ghost in our lives. Living in Miami, she called maybe twice a year, always too busy with her real estate career to care about our struggles. When I mentioned the mortgage crisis, she laughed dismissively. "That's your thing, Ashley," she'd said once, her tone dripping with indifference. I'd send her photos of my renovations, the new granite countertops, the beautiful burgundy curtains I'd saved months to buy. She never replied. I told myself it didn't matter. I was doing this for family, for love. I'd walk through the house at night, running my fingers along the walls I'd painted, feeling like they were extensions of my soul. But underneath my confidence, cracks were forming. My parents leaned on me more each year. Linda would ask for just a little help with utilities, and I'd cover them without question. Dad stopped working after his layoff, and I paid for his Chevy's transmission repairs, his doctor visits, his prescription medications. I didn't mind, at least, I told myself I didn't. I thought we were a team. Looking back now, I missed all the warning signs. Linda's phone calls to Stephanie grew longer, her voice softer when speaking about my half-sister's Miami success. Dad would mention Stephanie's real estate achievements with a pride I never heard when discussing my work. I brushed it off, convincing myself it was normal. They were my parents. They'd never betray me. But last night's dinner proved how wrong I'd been. By early afternoon, I needed answers. So I called my best friend Rachel, a sharp attorney I'd known since our days at Portland State University. She runs a small but successful practice downtown, and she's always been my voice of reason when life gets complicated. Sitting on my bed, surrounded by the familiar walls of our Maple Street home, I poured out everything from last night's disaster. I told her how Linda had delivered that 48-hour ultimatum like a death sentence, and how Dad just sat there silently while they handed my home to Stephanie. Rachel listened without interrupting, her calm presence grounding me through the phone. "Do you have any legal documents about the house?" she asked, switching into lawyer mode. "Anything from before your parents owned it?" I mentioned my grandmother Helen, who'd owned this Victorian beauty before she passed 3 years ago. I'd always assumed it went directly to Dad and Linda after her death. Rachel went quiet for a moment. "Give me 2 hours," she said firmly. "I need to check something important." I spent those 2 hours restless, pacing the hallway where family photos lined the walls. Grandma Helen's face kept flashing in my mind, her gentle smile, her weathered hands teaching me to bake chocolate chip cookies in the kitchen, her warm voice telling me stories on the front porch about buying this house as a young bride in 1962. She'd look at me with those twinkling blue eyes and say, "Ashley honey, this place will always be yours." I'd smiled, thinking it was just her way of making me feel special. Now, something in my gut told me it was more than that. I dug through an old shoebox in my closet, pulling out photos of Grandma Helen standing by the maple tree in our yard, her arm around my shoulders at my high school graduation. The memories stung, knowing my parents had dismissed everything she'd meant to me. Rachel called back, her voice tight with urgency. "Ashley, you're not going to believe this." She'd contacted a colleague in estate law and tracked down Grandma Helen's will at the Multnomah County Courthouse. My parents had never mentioned it, not once in 3 years. Rachel read the document over the phone, each word hitting me like a physical blow. Grandma Helen had left the house to me alone, not my parents, not Stephanie. The will was signed, notarized, and filed 2 years before she died, naming me as the sole heir to the Portland property. I collapsed onto my bed, hands shaking uncontrollably. "How did I not know?" I whispered. Rachel's voice turned ice cold. "Your parents had full access to that will, Ashley. They chose to hide it from you." The betrayal felt like a knife twisting in my chest. Dad and Linda, the people I'd trusted with my life, had concealed Grandma Helen's final wish while watching me pour $95,000 into what was legally already mine. Everything became crystal clear. Their long conversations with Stephanie, their pride in her Miami lifestyle, their silence about my countless sacrifices. They'd planned this betrayal while I bled myself dry keeping their secret. But they'd made one fatal mistake, they'd underestimated me. The next morning, I woke before dawn, my notebook still open from the previous night's planning session. Dad and Linda had driven to Salem to visit her sister, leaving the house eerily quiet. I stood in the living room, staring at the leather sectional sofa I'd bought with my first big promotion bonus, a beautiful chocolate brown piece that had taken me 4 months of overtime to afford. If they were forcing me out, I wasn't leaving my belongings behind for Stephanie to claim as her own. I grabbed a pen and started creating an inventory of every single item I'd purchased: the 65-inch Samsung Smart TV mounted on the wall, the stainless steel Whirlpool washer and dryer set in the basement, the custom burgundy curtains I'd ordered from Pottery Barn to match the sage walls I'd painted myself. Each item represented a piece of my soul, proof of the years I'd spent keeping this house alive. I called Rachel to finalize our legal strategy. She was already at her downtown office, her voice crisp and professional. "We'll file an emergency petition to enforce your grandmother's will," she explained. "It's straightforward, but we need documentation of your financial contributions." I pulled out a thick folder stuffed with receipts and bank statements. Every purchase, every repair, every dollar I'd invested was meticulously documented. Rachel suggested getting a notarized affidavit to establish my financial role in maintaining the property, and we scheduled a meeting to sign it that afternoon. For the first time in days, I felt a surge of control, like I was finally reclaiming what had always been mine. But first, I needed to secure my belongings. I searched online for Portland moving companies and found Pacific Northwest Movers, a local outfit with excellent reviews. I called and spoke to a guy named Jake, explaining I needed an emergency move. "Can you do it today?" I asked, my voice steady and determined. He hesitated briefly, then agreed to send a truck by 2 p.m. I gave him my detailed list: the sectional sofa, the Samsung TV, the washer and dryer, plus smaller items like the KitchenAid stand mixer and my bedroom furniture set. This is all personal property, I told him firmly. I'm taking what belongs to me. Jake didn't ask questions, just confirmed our Maple Street address and quoted me a fair price. While waiting, I walked through each room, double-checking my inventory. The antique dining table had belonged to Grandma Helen, so that stayed, but the 6 chairs around it were mine, purchased last year after Linda complained about the old ones being uncomfortable. I tagged everything with sticky notes, marking what stayed and what went. The process felt methodical, almost therapeutic, like I was reclaiming pieces of my identity that had been scattered throughout this house. Around noon, Mrs. Patterson from next door rang the doorbell. She was a kind woman in her 70s who'd known our family for decades and always brought us homemade apple pie at Thanksgiving. "You okay, sweetheart?" she asked, her eyes soft with genuine concern. I didn't tell her about the will or my parents' betrayal, that felt too raw, but I admitted I was moving my things out. "It's complicated family stuff," I said, forcing a smile. She squeezed my hand gently. "You've always been so good to this house and your parents. Whatever's happening, you don't deserve to be hurt like this." Her words hit deep, and I blinked back tears, grateful someone saw my worth. The movers would arrive soon, and then the real battle would begin. By mid-afternoon, the house felt hollow, my belongings loaded onto Pacific Northwest Movers truck and heading to a storage unit across town. I stood in the living room, its walls echoing with the absence of my chocolate leather sectional and Samsung TV. The silence was broken by aggressive pounding at the front door. I opened it to find Stephanie standing there, her designer Louis Vuitton suitcase at her feet, Gucci sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. She'd flown in from Miami, probably expecting to walk into a fully furnished mansion. Stephanie pushed past me, her Jimmy Choo heels clicking sharply on the hardwood floors I'd refinished. "Where is everything?" she snapped, scanning the bare living room with disgust. I crossed my arms, staying by the doorway. "I took what belongs to me," I said, keeping my voice level but firm. She spun around, her face flushing red with entitlement. "Yours? Mom and Dad said this house is mine now. You don't get to strip it bare like some vindictive child." I stepped forward, my voice steady but ice cold. "I paid for that sectional, the TV, the washer and dryer, everything I took. You didn't contribute a single penny to this house." Her perfectly manicured eyebrows shot up, but she didn't back down. "You think you're entitled because you threw some money around? This is my home now, Ashley. You're done here." The air crackled with tension. I clenched my fists, fighting every urge to scream. "You haven't set foot in this house for 2 years, I said through gritted teeth. "I kept this place standing while you were off playing realtor in Miami, completely ignoring this family." Stephanie laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that made my skin crawl. "Oh please, spare me the martyr act. You stayed here out of pity, playing the perfect stepdaughter. Mom and Dad chose me for a reason, Ashley. Deal with it." Her words cut like razors, but I refused to flinch. "They chose wrong," I said, stepping closer. "You have no idea what I've sacrificed for this family." She stormed through the house like a hurricane, checking the kitchen, the basement, her face growing redder with each empty room she discovered. "The dining chairs, the curtains, the appliances," she screamed, spinning back to face me. "You took everything." I held her furious gaze without blinking. "Only what I paid for with my own money. You want a house? Furnish it yourself." Stephanie's hands trembled as she yanked out her iPhone, her voice shaking with pure rage. "You're absolutely unbelievable. I'm calling Mom and Dad right now. They'll deal with you." I shrugged casually, leaning against the wall. "Go ahead. They're not here anyway." She froze, confusion replacing anger. "What do you mean?" I didn't elaborate, just watched as she dialed frantically, her fingers fumbling with the phone. Stephanie paced the empty kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, her voice rising to near hysteria as she spoke to Linda. "She gutted the entire place, Mom. It's completely empty." I stayed silent, letting her rant and rave. She hung up, glaring at me with pure venom. "They're driving back from Salem tonight," she said, her tone murderous. "You're finished, Ashley." I pointed calmly toward the front door. "You know where the exit is." She grabbed her expensive suitcase, muttering curses under her breath, and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the Victorian's frame rattled. I stood there alone, my heart pounding but my resolve stronger than ever. Stephanie thought she could waltz in and claim my life's work. She had absolutely no idea what was coming next. That evening found me at Rachel's downtown loft apartment, my belongings safely secured in storage. My iPhone buzzed relentlessly with calls from Linda, her name flashing accusingly on the screen. I let every call go to voicemail, knowing exactly what storm was brewing back on Maple Street. Stephanie had clearly called them home from Salem early, and now they were facing the consequences of their years of deception. I wasn't ready to hear their voices, not yet. Instead, I sipped chamomile tea at Rachel's granite kitchen counter, the weight of the past 3 days settling deep into my bones. When I finally gathered courage to play the voicemails, Linda's voice was shrill, almost unrecognizable with panic. "Ashley, what have you done? There are strangers at our house claiming they own it now." Dad's voice cut in, heavy with disbelief and confusion. "Some real estate investor says he bought the property. You need to explain what's happening here." I didn't call them back. The truth was simple. They'd walked into a reality they'd created through their own lies and betrayal. Rachel had worked with lightning speed, using Grandma Helen's will to expose their deception and push through a legal challenge that revealed the house's true ownership. The property had been quietly sold to Thompson Real Estate Development, a local investment company that specialized in Victorian renovations. I hadn't orchestrated the sale directly, but I definitely set the wheels in motion by enforcing my legal rights under the will. My phone rang again, this time Dad's number. I answered, keeping my voice steady and controlled. "Dad, I'm not coming back to fix your mess," I said before he could speak. "You hid Grandma Helen's will from me for 3 years. You tried to steal my inheritance and give it to Stephanie." He sputtered, his words a jumbled mix of anger and shock. "We were trying to protect the family unit. You can't just destroy everything we've built." I cut him off sharply. "You destroyed it when you decided to lie to me. Grandma's will was crystal clear about her intentions. This is entirely on you and Linda." I hung up, my hands trembling slightly but my resolve rock solid. Linda called next, her tone sharp with desperate accusation. "Ashley, you're tearing this family apart. Come home and fix this situation immediately." I took a deep breath, my voice turning ice cold. "I'm done fixing your mistakes, Linda. Talk to Rachel about Grandma's will if you want answers." I ended the call and silenced my phone completely. Rachel sat across from me, her laptop open with legal documents spread across the coffee table. "They're in full panic mode," she observed, her eyes sharp with professional satisfaction. "The new owners have the deed recorded. Your parents can't undo this." I nodded, staring into my tea mug. The house I'd fought for, the one I'd poured my soul into preserving, was gone. Not because I wanted it sold, but because my parents' betrayal had forced my hand legally. I felt a sharp pang of loss, but also strange relief. They'd completely underestimated me, assumed I'd fold under pressure and accept their cruel treatment. They couldn't have been more wrong. My parents kept calling throughout the night, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails. "Ashley, we're still your family," Linda pleaded in one message. "You can't destroy us like this." I didn't respond to any of them. Each message felt like emotional manipulation, but I refused to carry their guilt anymore. Grandma Helen's will was my shield, undeniable proof that the house was meant for me, not them. I wasn't the one who'd shattered our family's trust. They had done that all by themselves. 6 months later, I stood in my beautiful new apartment in Portland's Pearl District, morning sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. I'd built an entirely new life for myself, completely free from the suffocating weight of my family's expectations and lies. I'd landed a fantastic position at Nike's corporate headquarters in Beaverton, a dream job in their data analytics division where my insights were valued and my contributions recognized. My days were filled with meaningful meetings, coffee runs to the trendy cafe downstairs, and peaceful evenings arranging my furniture, my chocolate sectional, my Samsung TV, all the pieces I'd fought so hard to keep. I hadn't spoken to Dad, Linda, or Stephanie since that devastating night at Rachel's apartment, and I'd blocked all their numbers permanently. The silence had felt heavy initially, but it gave me precious space to breathe, to rediscover who Ashley really was without their toxic shadow hanging over me. Through mutual friends, I heard that Stephanie had scrambled to buy a new house back in Miami. She'd expected to inherit a fully furnished Portland mansion for free, but with Grandma Helen's house sold, she'd been forced to dip deep into her real estate commissions. The news didn't bring me joy, but it felt completely just. She'd assumed she could claim what was never hers to begin with, and now she was learning the true cost of that arrogance. Dad and Linda faced their own harsh consequences. Without the house as collateral, they'd moved into a cramped rental apartment in Gresham, a significant step down from the Victorian elegance they'd tried to control. Word travels fast in Portland's tight-knit communities, and neighbors like Mrs. Patterson didn't hold back their disappointment when they learned the truth about the hidden will. My parents' reputation, once solid in our neighborhood, crumbled completely as people discovered they deliberately concealed Grandma Helen's final wishes. They were struggling financially too, with no property to leverage and mounting legal fees from their failed attempts to contest the sale. I didn't know all the details, and honestly, I didn't want to. Their choices had led them to this place, and I was completely done carrying their emotional burdens. Rachel became my anchor during this transition, checking in regularly, her sharp legal instincts still protective of me. She'd successfully finalized all the proceedings, ensuring the sale stood firm and my rights remained protected. Over coffee at Powell's Books Cafe one Saturday, she grinned and said, "You're so much stronger than they ever gave you credit for, Ashley." I smiled back, feeling the deep truth of those words. I'd spent years undervaluing myself, pouring everything into a house I thought defined my worth. But this painful ordeal had taught me something profound and life-changing. My value wasn't tied to that Victorian house or their approval. It was in my ability to stand up for myself, draw firm boundaries, and choose my own happiness over their manipulation. Learning to set boundaries had been the hardest lesson of my life. Cutting contact wasn't about anger or revenge, it was about protecting my peace and mental health. I'd given too much for too long, desperately trying to please a family that never truly saw my worth. Now I knew better, and I'd never go back. I walked through Portland streets, along the Willamette River waterfront, feeling lighter than I had in years. The life I was building wasn't perfect, but it was authentically mine, built entirely on my own terms, with my own values, and my own dreams guiding the way forward. Grandma Helen would have been proud.